Now, in my earlier lecture, I introduced to you the concept of a superconducting coherence length. And so each superconductor is basically associated with two important length scales, which is the penetration depth, the minimum distance or the distance up to which the magnetic field can penetrate into the superconductor, and the coherence length, which is the typical length scale over which superconductivity is maintained when you approach any normal superconducting interface, or it is also the size of the Cooper pair, the minimum distance over which electrons can remain paired with each other. Now, let us look at this interplay of these two length scales, which will help us to understand type 1 and type 2 superconductors. So, let us get into type 1 and type 2 superconductors. If you recall, we had seen that if you measure the magnetization as a function of magnetic field, so if you measure magnetization as a function of magnetic field, then typically in type 1 materials, of course, the material exhibits the perfect Meissner response. M is equal to minus 1 by 4 pi h, because B is 0 inside the superconductor. The magnetization will exhibit perfect diamagnetism, and then at the critical field, the magnetization will drop to 0 and the material will turn normal. So this is the typical image response of a type 1 superconductor. However, there are other materials in which the material exhibits a perfect diamagnetic response, or the Meissner state, up to a lower critical field Hc1, and after Hc1 the material still remains superconducting, but the diamagnetism actually goes to 0 slowly. Okay, and the magnetic field over which the field at which the magnetization is lost completely, or the diamagnetic response is completely lost, is the upper critical field Hc2. Let me just correct it. This is Hc2. This is not Hc1, but this is Hc2. So this is the lower critical field and this is the upper critical field. At lower critical field, the up to field from 0 to Hc1 in type 2 superconductors, the system maintains the Meissner response, namely M is minus 1 by 4 pi h, because B is equal to 0 inside the system. Just go back to the previous lectures, you will see this where I discuss the Meissner response, you will see this discussion there. Okay, and so now in type 2 superconductors, the magnetization decays from its maximum diamagnetic value. The magnetization decays gradually and goes to 0 at the upper critical field Hc2. So between Hc1 and Hc2, the diamagnetism decreases gradually, and at Hc2, the upper critical field, the superconductivity is completely destroyed. So whereas in type 1 superconductor, the diamagnetism is lost abruptly and the superconductor turns normal at Hc, in type 2 superconductors, the superconductivity is lost only at the upper critical field, and there is another critical field which is Hc1. So the diamagnetism is actually gradually lost between Hc1 and Hc2. And there are materials which you can classify as type 1 materials, and there are materials which exhibit type 2 superconductivity. Typically type 2 superconductors are more applied superconductors, because these type 2 superconductors have a lot of application, because they can sustain superconductivity up to very high magnetic fields. Upper critical fields typically in type 2 superconductors, in some superconductors, can be of the order of even few hundreds of Teslas. So if you have an application where you are using a superconductor in a magnetic field environment, then in such superconductors you can actually apply it, you can use it, you can maintain superconductivity up to few hundreds of Tesla. So there is no really restriction that you have to work with low magnetic field environments. Whereas type 1 superconductors, the typical critical fields can be of the order of few hundreds of Oersted or a few hundreds of Gauss only. Okay, so now let us look at this difference between type 1 and type 2 superconductors a little bit from the fundamental point of view. What actually distinguishes type 1 and type 2 superconductors? So let us take a normal superconductor interface. For this discussion, let us take a normal superconductor interface. So you have an interface where you have a normal region and a superconducting region, and we ask the question, how much energy is required to maintain or create such an interface? How much energy is required to create or maintain such an interface? Okay, so you have an interface which is this red line, which separates the superconductor on this end and a normal region on this end. Now, when you apply a magnetic field, if you apply a magnetic field, then this magnetic field is going to be present uniformly in the normal region, but in the superconducting region, the magnetic field will decay out over a distance lambda. So the magnetic field will decay out over a distance lambda, where lambda is the superconducting penetration depth. And if you look at the density of Cooper pairs, then as you approach the interface, if you approach this interface, then the superconductivity will be lost. So far away from the interface, of course, the superconductivity is finite, but as you approach this interface, the superconductivity will be lost. This thing will be lost over a distance scale, which is the coherence length. This is the distance over which superconductivity will be completely destroyed. So across the interface, the superconducting order parameter will be going to 0, or you can, as you know, the superconducting wave function has a finite value. The square of the superconducting wave function, if you look at the square of the superconducting wave function, this is nothing else but the density of Cooper pairs. So this superconducting order parameter or the superconducting wave function is finite deep in the superconducting state, and as you approach the normal to superconducting interface, the superconductivity is lost. So this is the boundary. So this is your superconducting normal interface. And across this interface, so we are looking at how much is the energy required for creating or maintaining such an interface in a superconductor. Okay, so as you can see that if you apply a magnetic field P, this magnetic field, which is the blue line, decays over a distance which is the lambda, the penetration depth, and the superconducting order is destroyed over as you approach this interface, the superconductivity is destroyed over a distance scale which is the superconducting coherence length. So now let us look at the energetics for maintaining the interface. So if you recall that when you approach the free energy, if you look at the free energy, then the free energy of the normal state, this is the free energy of the normal state, this is as a function of temperature, the free energy of the normal state is higher than, this is the free energy of the normal state, and if you go into the superconducting state, the free energy of the superconducting state is lower than that of the normal state Tc. Okay, this is the superconducting state free energy, which is lower than the free energy of the normal state, and the amount by which is lower is hc square. This is the amount by which the free energy of the superconducting state is below the free energy of the normal state. So now, over a distance scale xi, over a distance xi, superconductivity is being destroyed, which implies energy is being gained over xi, because the free energy of the system of the superconducting state is lower than the free energy of the normal state. So over this distance xi, so over this length scale xi, if you over this distance xi, if you are destroying superconductivity, then of course energy is being gained over this region, because the free energy of the superconducting state is lower than the free energy of the normal state. So you have to supply energy to actually take it to the normal state. So if it is becoming normal in this region, it is energy is being gained, and the typical energy, so if Hc is the energy density, then okay, energy is this is the energy density. Okay, this is the free energy difference between, this is the energy density. If you recall, if A is area of the interface, if this interface has an area A, namely it is something like this, this is the area. On one side you have superconductor, on the other side you have the normal region. Let me redo this, that if the red represents the area of the interface, on one side you have superconductor, on the other side you have a normal region, then this is the area A, and this is the distance over which it remains fuzzy. So this distance is xi. So over this distance your superconductivity is being lost. Okay, so over a distance xi, A is the area of the interface, and over a distance xi, superconductivity is lost. Xi is distance over which superconductivity is lost. So the volume of this region over which superconductivity is lost is A into xi. So therefore the energy gained over the interface is hc square A into xi. This is the energy which is gained over the interface, because superconductivity is being lost in this region, because superconductivity over this interface region, superconductivity is being lost as you cross this interface, and as a result of which, because energy over this interface is being lost, energy is being gained because the free energy of the normal superconducting state is lower than the free energy of the normal state. You have to give it energy, you have to raise its energy to make it normal. So if you have to raise its energy, it is gaining energy. Once superconductors Cooper pairs are being broken, it is gaining energy. You are going into a more highly energetic state. So the energy is being gained. So this is one. Okay. Now the other contribution to the energy across the interface is that when you apply this magnetic field, okay, then this magnetic field decays over a distance which is xi, or which is lambda, the distance over which the magnetic field is penetrating into the superconductor is xi. So for this interface, so if you apply a field of the order of Hc, if you apply a field of the order of Hc, then the electromagnetic energy density is of the order of Hc square. Okay, and if you again go back to this interface, now it has an area A. This interface has an area A, but now over this distance lambda, the magnetic field is decaying out. The magnetic field is decaying out over a distance lambda. So energy which is being lost, the electromagnetic energy density is Hc square. This is the normal region, and on this side you have the superconducting region. Okay, so if you have this field of Hc, then because you enter into the superconducting state, this magnetic field is being shielded out. So the energy which is being lost from this system because of shielding out of the magnetic field is of the order of Hc square by 8 pi. So the energy lost across the superconducting normal interface due to shielding is Hc square A into lambda. So this is equation 2. One is the gain in energy because the superconducting order parameter or the superconductivity is being lost over a distance which is the coherence length, and the other is this is the energy gained because superconductivity is being lost over a distance xi, and the other is the energy lost because of shielding. Okay, because of perfect diamagnetic shielding you are losing this energy. So therefore the net energy difference is 1 minus 2 which is Hc square A into xi minus lambda. This is the net energy difference, or this is the energy required to maintain the superconducting normal interface. Okay, or the energy required per unit area, energy required per unit area of interface is hc square into xi minus lambda. This is the energy required to create a superconducting normal interface in the superconductor. We will look at this in more greater details in the next lecture.